Hello and welcome. Thank you for dropping in with us in our first Melanated Muses episode. I'm Azaria, and these are the other goddesses that are going to be hanging with us today and chatting about emotional captivity.
Hi, I'm Palomi, and so excited to be here with both of you and all of you watching. Mm.
Mm.
Hi, loves. I'm Mika, and I'm super excited to drop into this medicine today and in all the ways that we're called to excavate these feels. Yeah, thank you for joining us. And thank you both for being my co-conspirators. Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Yeah. So this is something that we kind of started playing with. We've been playing with this, the melanated experience in all ways, and we've been playing with this together for years. But the last couple of weeks, we started talking about emotional captivity and really being able to decolonize emotions in the body and what that might look like specifically for Black and Brown bodies, and how our emotional experience has been so wrought with trauma and traumatic retention, and how that then shows up in the ways that we express ourselves or don't, and how we're in relationship with our own bodies, with our God, with our source, with one another or not. And it felt like a really potent and necessary conversation, and I guess one that kind of felt like this is where we begin. This is where we, as our show, as our cauldron of magic together, that this was a place that we felt called to drop in today. Yeah, I'm really, I love emotions. I love the entire just the entire gamut, the full spectrum of emotions. And I know that my own upbringing, and each of you, I'd love to hear, but we were encoded with ideas of how we were allowed to experience emotion as Black, brown children, and then as female identifying as melanated women in the world, and how that, like, I know for myself that it affected my capacity to create and to show up fully for my own medicine.
Mm.
And it feels like it even affected us starting our show together. There it goes. Us being able to just drop into this experience together, and share this with the world, like at the level that we knew we were being called to share together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Mm.
And even like finding ways to unlearn this emotional narrative of holding back our emotions and
Yeah.
keeping them in and keeping them quiet, and finding different ways to be able to express them. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, I had to spend most of my young adulthood trying to find my voice that I so long suppressed, right? So finding ways that we can really dive beneath those stories and narratives and belief systems that, parents, society, everything has placed upon us, and unlearning all of these things to really dive deep into our beautiful emotional capacity, and allow that voice and give that permission to really explore our emotions and to voice them and to stand in them proudly as Black and brown and colored bodies.
Yeah, and something I really have been inquiring in myself is the place in me that says yes to me and permissions that full emotional texture of expression, and how I can show up and create space to fully feel that and welcome that, and also not almost organize it or tailor it or create some kind of coherence to it for other people, so that it's easier for them to understand me, or it's easier for others to acknowledge what I'm feeling in some way. And so I'm noticing the deeper place of where that particular expectation in self can come from, in wanting to make it easier or make it palatable for someone else.
Yes, Palumi, I love that. It's like we're almost making it like digestible for other people to like really understand, and like bite size almost, and holding ourselves back.
Right.
Thank you for that reflection, Palumi. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that from so many melanated folks. Like, how do I make, especially that, like my work, I work with creators, with other creators, and how do I make this digestible for other people? And it's like, ooh, but is it digestible for you? Like, is your body, and even more than digestible, is your body able to metabolize what's coming through, the ancestral, the generational, the trauma, the traumatic retention that has suffocated your emotional capacity, right? To fully show up as you, rather than showing up in a way that is palatable or digestible for other people. Because when we're doing that, we're our capacity to create and our capacity to be with our own magic, we begin to doubt it, we begin to fear it, and we begin to doubt our own ability to handle all of ourselves. And so then we either go into that vilification of our emotional experience, our vilification of our magic, our vilification of our ourselves as a temple for the divine to work in and through, or we begin to just try to fragment like little bits of ourselves. Like, oh, well, maybe I can be happy in this instance with these people, and then I can be sad, they can handle my sorrow. Oh, and then over here, that's when I can be erotic, like Paloma, like you mentioned, like then I can be in the erotic, that's where I can experience pleasure, and this is where I can hold rage. But we lose that, or we think that we've lost that ability to hold all of ourselves, and to show up as all of ourselves, because that we've been so encoded and conditioned through colonization, through patriarchy, through so many things, that people can't handle all of us, and that it's dangerous for us to be all of ourselves. And so then we hide it, we vilify it, we deny it, we disown it, and we become fragmented aspects of ourselves. And just really quickly, I'd love to hear from both of you. Azaria, you mentioned something that I just wanted to hold in the space. You mentioned being colored, and this is something that I just, for our folks listening, Azaria hails from the northern side. So in Canada, I've heard many Black and Brown folks reference colored bodies. In the States, that can be like, oh my God, it can bring up some stuff, and we'll generally say bodies of color. So I just wanted to bring that into this space for whoever, if there was any reaction in your body, to just know that we're coming from multicultural experiences within our own selves, and just, if you hear us, and we all play really lovely together, like deliciously together, and just to hold that from different people that you drop into the magic with, and just knowing that like we're coming from that place of love from within our own countries and cultures as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you, Nika, for that.
What I heard you say in that fragmentation, Nika, brings to light something that I think we're all struggling with in the integration of our wholeness, our healing, right? It's that we begin to live outside of ourselves as soon as we stop permissioning the erotic guidelines for ourselves.
Yeah.
And in that fragmentation, that's where we lose connection to essence in ourselves, our source that enlivens us, and the places that already are whole and inherently full and connected and vibrant, but simply need reactivation and remembering by creating or remembering our erotic guidelines, so to speak. Something that I was learning and really feeling into from one of Audre Lorde's pieces. What are the erotic guidelines that can guide our full yes, so that we stay inside of our body, inside of our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being, our physical well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
And the wound process is fascinating, right? Like when we look at the place, the origin story, let's say, of the place that hurt the
Yes.
most.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It could be sourced from trauma. It could be ancestral. It can be a lineage wound, an imprinted place from our nurture and our primary caregivers. It can be so many things. And I literally bow at the feet of all of the wounds that have formed us, because they are the driving force for why we live, to thrive and refine, reconnect, remember ourself. And in that we have such particular different frequencies of where that can be, right? Even in the energy medicine lineage, there are places and different systems in the body where there are core expressions of our reality that can be inhibited or contracted or hurt in some way. And in that, when one part is disintegrated or wounded, that is where we feel less whole, that we know, then we know we have the potential to feel. And in that, we're all reconciling different places and different lenses of where our wounds live, that, you know, almost invite us to be outside of ourselves or jump outside of ourselves or remain fragmented. And then we begin to create our realities that way. And it doesn't work. I mean, it can work for a short period of time, but it's not our whole, full, best selves.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I want to uncover a little bit more, especially in the lens of our Black and brown bodies, and what our particular nuanced experiences of that wounding or trauma and where that comes from in so many ways.
Yeah.
Thank you, Palomi.
Yeah.
I love this idea of reconciliation.
Mm.
It feels so, and all three of us come from many many different like innate lineages and all of the things, but we are all we've all studied in trauma informed capacities, and through that work there is like we know what happens when we try to only work with certain emotions, or we assign good or bad, like, oh, this is something that we're supposed to work with, and I'm trying to get rid of these other things. Like, I don't want to feel this, and so I'm going to vilify this more, or I'm going to try to get rid of it, and only work on these, like, only the, you know, the quote unquote acceptable emotions for my Black or brown body. And this reconciliation almost invites us, it does invite us into this reintegration rather than a further fragmentation of being like, oh, well, this is the stuff that's good, so I'll try to give more of this, but this is the stuff that's bad, and so I'm going to try to get rid of that. And instead, it's like we work with everything, right? Like that full emotion. And growing up, it was like, oh, well, oh, like if you're going to fit into Black society, then you've got to Black American society, then this is how you've got to show up. And oh, if you're going to fit in here, then this is how you're going to show up. And like my come from, and then other folks, and I grew up very in kind of like various different pockets, like school, like I kind of got bussed into another town, and it was a mostly white school with some Black and brown folks, and then where I lived, it was a lot of Black, Latino, Latina, and some Indigenous, but like, and some Asian, but really predominantly kind of like Black, Latino, and white. And so church was just like that was all Black folks. And like, so there were very different segmented aspects of growing up. And it was like, oh, these are the acceptable emotions for you as a Black or brown person in this group.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you're in, like, this is just the Black group, and then this is the Black and brown group, and this is how you're allowed to act here. And then this is the predominantly white group. These are the emotions that are safe for us as white folks for you to experience and express here. And there was this, like, you can grow up with such a separation. And this reconciliation is like, no, I get to experience all of these. Like, I don't have to keep myself segmented or fragmented. And when we're trying to only experience a few, we suffocate our capacity to feel any of them. Like, if we're wanting more pleasure and we're wanting to step into the erotic, but we refuse to work with rage because we're taught that, oh, like, don't be that Black or brown woman, like, into that stereotype, like, get rid of that, you shouldn't feel that. We also limit our capacity to feel the erotic, to feel joy, to feel pleasure, to feel love, to feel belonging. Everything is so impacted and enmeshed. So if we're trying to get rid of one, it's like we can't fully express or feel the other. So I love, it's like a reconciliation of emotional experience in and of itself, like our like that we get to experience all of them without it being unsafe for our body of color.
Yeah. And I love that, like, the healing that brings, it brings you deeper into this remembrance of just who you are and that authentic self, right? Because sometimes it can cause us to feel, as you said, fragmented, and just finding that authentic piece, like, where can I bring myself fully, right? So once we begin to really heal and work with all of the emotions and work with that reconciliation, it feels extremely close to your truest self. I love that.
It's like all of this exploration of the erotic. What is that? What does that erotic mean to you?
I love diving into, I mean, you know me, it's like the primal, the depths, the underworld, the shadow side, and like Eros in and of itself, like bringing that deep, passionate love into our healing, into our remembrance, into this sensual exploration of life and love and liberation and all of it. Like, it's like the erotic, like, we get to choose how to exist in our own skin and be so fucking turned on and madly and wildly in love with our own capacity to feel, that the erotic sets us free. It becomes a portal into our own knowing and our own liberation, and that becomes the ripple effect that we get to create in the world. Like, if we get to, as melanated bodies, feel safe in our own erotic nature, fuck, that's everything shifts from there. Our relationships, the types of relationships we cultivate, partnership, right? Like, even our capacity to drop in, like, when we met, it was just like boom, right? Like, it was just like souls were like boom, 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 boom. And each of us had, and of course we're all journeying, but we all had this connection with the erotic within ourselves that was able to resonate. Like, it was this tuning fork, right? Like, between us. And it's like it calls in like-souled humans, that the erotic is like, ooh, my erotic is safe with each of you, and your erotic is safe with me.
And their erotic is permissioning.
Yes.
Welcoming, inviting the erotic in others, in ourselves. That's certainly what happened as far as I remember.
Yeah, and just being able to show up as you are in that moment, right? That, as Palomi said, that permission to just show up as you are in your body else label your erotic for you is just standing there and showing up as you are, and just seeing others just as they are without the need to label the erotic on them. Yeah.
I love that, labeling the erotic without needing to label the erotic on them.
Like primal creatures, they simply know.
Yeah, they just are.
They recognize another. They smell the pheromones. They feel the quality, the walk, the gait rather, but they see in each other what they know in themselves, and that recognition is that sense of deeper interconnectivity, acknowledgement, permissioning.
Yeah. Erotic recognition. Feels like it's like when you kind of like, with a, not that we're doing this, just energetic. Like if you were to kind of like strum a spider web, we're not doing this. The spiders are safe. But if you were like the entire web reverberates with that strumming. And it's like there is this soul strum that happens with erotic recognition, where it's like, I don't need you to be anything for me. I don't need you to evoke the erotic the way that I do, or to even know it the way that I do. Like, no, I don't need that. It's like, I invite you to show up and you invite me to show up. And it's just like this, everyone is just strumming together. So like we're creating the frequency of the erotic together. But no one needs it to be a specific thing. Like it's almost as if that traumatic retention piece is able to be set aside. Like we're able to go through that deep back into the essence, like as I like back into the true self.
Yeah.
There's also a particular place where the erotic is so deeply in need of reclamation, in the same way that so much of our culture, our identities, our transmissions have been colonized. There is an aspect to the erotic as well that is asking us to be reclaimed, reowned in ourselves, so that the erotic is also decolonized. And in that exploration, I believe it dovetails deeply on our ability to move through our trauma bodies, to move through our profound experiences of pain and fear and being taken from in various ways. And that's something I feel as though one cannot be explored without the other. One cannot be considered without the other. That's almost like our traumatic retention is in an inverse relationship to our erotic reclamation.
Yeah. There's been such a colonization of Black and brown sex, sexual identity, sexual essence, sexual, even body parts being stolen and used for science down to the cellular level. And the capacity for us to be in our own erotic reclamation, this sovereignty within our own skin, and to, it's almost like this tracking, like we track with the breath, we track with the erotic, we track with the own remembrance, we track in communion with one another.
Mm.
track the safety, and that's how we begin to decolonize our own sexual essence, and we allow it to, it feels like there's a piece of fluidity. I hear this a lot, and I know that we talk about this a lot, and like in our lives, but together with that there's the fluidity has to be there. A part of colonization feels like there is, it's like you're black, you're brown, you're this, you're indigenous, you're here, you're uprooted. This is how your sex has to look. If you're not like this, then you're no longer either a part of the culture, you're no longer this or that. And so if there is a non-binary expression, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like we have to shut that down. That is not allowed. If there is any fluidity in your sexuality or sexual preference, like no, no, no. It becomes very, I believe that a part of colonization of Black and brown sexuality was this, like you have this very small box to fit in and
Mm-hmm.
stay in that box. And if you step out of that, you either now lose your community or you're going to be harmed again, either by white bodies or by other melanated bodies for stepping outside of the box that colonization has placed you into. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like the erasure of like independence in your sexuality and in your sex. Yeah.
Yeah. Like erotic sovereignty as well. Yeah. What were you going to say, Palomi?
Simply that so much of the moment that we encounter trauma is the exact place when we learn to fragment, to dissociate, and to step outside of ourselves. And if you really consider that, the more that we are stepping outside of ourselves, we are leaving ourselves behind, the less we are able to be in that sovereignty, in
Mm-hmm.
that erotic dialogue with ourself. And it's that fragmentation that I want to get curious about, because if we've all been on our own healing journeys through various modalities, experiences, and ways, like what is it that we feel is, one of several, of course, toolboxes, allies, support systems, processes that has helped us to defragment and reintegrate so that we are closer to our erotic reclamation, to that deep sovereignty that you were mentioning, Nika.
I love that curiosity.
Yeah, me too. I think like for me, a big one is just my own inner listening. Just so
Mm-hmm.
simple, but just listening to my body, listening to the stories and narratives, and listening to my truth underneath of those,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I honor that. And I also honor the experience where some people are so loud with their traumas that they can't hear themselves at
Yeah.
the stage they are in,
Yeah.
So I'm also just aware and permissioning that experience to also be incredibly valid. Like if you can't hear yourself yet,
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
like, that is okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. For me, there's definitely a space of body. So body movement, body as a temple, body as a temple for the breath as the gateway, as a portal, pussy, oracle between your thighs as the portal. Just being like in the full expression. This is even the erotic, like everything, full on like indigo child here. So even just being able to like land here and be like, stop yelling at God as a child, be like, you made a mistake. You infinite being soar is like, I'm not supposed to be here. And allowing myself to really get back, like to feel this and to cultivate a relationship rather than a battleground within my own body, that my body wasn't, and for me, like with just different medical health trauma, that my body wasn't trying to kill me, right? Like, and reclaiming that relationship through movement, through sports, through breath, through all of the things, and allowing this, and allowing myself to notice any places that I had started to believe what colonization told us about who we are, where I had encoded those things, where I had spoken those things to myself or to others. If I had written those things as a writer, where had I perpetuated those things? Where was I currently perpetuating? And allowing, it's like decolonization gets to ride on the breath. Like it gets to ride in the sinews and the places in between. Yeah, so for me, that the reintegration was really looking at any of those boxes that I had accepted for myself, around, like as a descendant of slaves, as a descendant of Native people whose lands were stolen, as a descendant of women who didn't feel safe to be in their bodies, like who did not and were not safe to be in their bodies, and to notice the traumatic retention that coursed through my veins and the uprooted feeling, and to be able to breathe with that, and to move with that, and to be in the spaces between. So a lot of shadow work, underworld work, right? Like all emotions, not like you can do this because you're Black, you can do this because you're brown, you can do this because of this, but like, no, what's allowing that continuous excavation, like decades of excavation, and knowing that we're carrying hundreds and thousands of years of this pain and this trauma, and knowing that one practice, one pranayama session, one breathwork session, one run outside, it's not going to heal, it's not going to fix, and that there's nothing to fix. There's simply the remembrance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you brought in breath. It's truly our fundamental and foundational experience of exchanging energy with the world simply through an inhale and an exhale. And as we know through all of these, ancient but also more trendy and well-versed breathwork modalities, that so much can be rewired, reconfigured, processed, released simply through the energetic experience of inhale and exhale at different timelines and frequencies. It's remarkable. I still remember how deep so many of our breathwork journeys were, Nika, that we did in Mexico, and how able we were to meet the illusion of captivity from trauma or fear or pain in the moment of exchanging energy with life in breath, and how we were also able to overcome that, to release that, to move through that, to at least relate to it differently, and to begin to create a new relationship to the experience of that original trauma, original wound, original pain body, and then slowly begin to continue unraveling, releasing, integrating through that practice, right? And so we were practicing a biodynamic breath work modality in a deep way through different psychosomatic bands in the body. That was what we were working with, and it was powerful.
Yeah.
I've also loved bringing in, just to speak on different ways to process. In energy medicine, I've loved working with the Reichian system of energy bands in the body as well, the core energetics of our system, and similar to the chakra system, they have locations, physical anatomical locations across the body, but they address and access different layers of emotions and pain bodies, memories, even imprints from childhood and otherwise over the course of our journeys of growing up into or becoming the story of, you know, whatever trauma, wound, story, etc., that's holding us captive from our full expression, full integration.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
The breath is so. You both know, and some of you out there might know, but yeah, the breath has been, it's been a challenge with my medical stuff as a kid, and it's been the most healing thing to be able to simply to take a breath is, yeah, it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I so appreciate that there are so many ways to go about healing and so many ways to go about remembrance. And all of us have worked with various, you know, ancient, traditional, indigenous wisdoms. Some born, like, I'm like, some born to us through lineage, some kind of spoken to us in dreams that are like, this is the next thing to follow. And some that we, like you mentioned, Palumi, like where we kind of, some of the more modern interpretations of ancient lineages, and all of them can be incredibly potent and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we get called to things like when we're ready to release a specific chain. Like these, you mentioned stories, Palumi, like the stories, like stories can hold us captive. They can become these emotional prison guards in our body, and they can live in different places. And there can be this story in your shoulder, and there can be this story in your heart, and it can hold so much emotion. And this, we get called to whatever it is, modalities, traditions, healers, different transmissions, whatever it might be, when there's a chain that's like, oh, this, what are the, like, are they links in the chain, whatever they're called, the little each little thing, like, oh, this part's ready to be released. And it's like, this is like the teaching comes in, or the teacher comes in, or we remember ourselves back into something that is, I mean, it's all been there all along, but we remember. And it's, yeah, yeah. I don't think I have a point here. It's just the stories and the chains, and that we get called to it. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's like this idea that we have to go out and seek,
Mm-hmm.
going back to that external, like you have to go find the teacher, you have to find the lineage, or you have to find whatever it is. But your body offers these things up to you. Like your body offers up when it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just following that thread and trusting
Yeah.
it. And it can look so different for people at different times in their lives, whether something really speaks to them on a soul level or not, or whether may that be later in time or never,
Yeah.
right? So just trusting that inner knowing, and just following that thread, sometimes blindly, and then only to look back and realize, like, yes, that was the thing that really just opened up a little bit for me to go deeper. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, something's coming through as I feel you, Azaria, and it's a passage I read around trauma for women a long time ago. I'll try and recall to the best of my capacity, but it's related to finding and discovering particular pain bodies and traumas through the sacred vessel, through our yoni, upon childbirth and labor and delivery, because something is being activated in that particular remembrance of the body and the tissues and those portals. And it was a woman sharing her experience of remembering a past abuse that she completely had forgotten, dismissed, perhaps. And it was just brought fully through when she was giving birth to her first child. And I just found that to be so remarkable. The linkages, Nika, you shared the linkages that bring us into all of the psychosomatic awareness when we least expect it, right?
Yeah.
Or even the gifts. My grandmother shared these beautiful dreams and visions she was having while she was birthing my mother. And she said her first child was different. It wasn't like that. But when she was birthing her second, my mother, she had such wild, beautiful visions and images coming through. And that was her experience, right? It's not all, of course, trauma and pain, but it's just an interesting psychosomatic activator, right? What
Yeah.
does the body, what do our tissues, our cells, our ancestry remember and want to tell us with different, activations of living life, of being in the human experience.
Yeah, and such a grand opening. Like even in the small openings, it can
Yeah.
happen. Like it doesn't even have to
Yes.
be like birth. Like it happens when you have sex, or
Absolutely.
it happens in so many different ways of opening the body, right?
Mhm.
Then it has this chance to really speak or say something or remember, or yeah, beautiful for me. I
Mm.
love that you brought that into the space.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm. So powerful.
Yeah. There's so much stored in our tissues,
Exactly.
Hmm.
and in our bones, in our breath, and the no breath, right? And in our blood, like everything that is moving through us holds something. It holds a story. It holds joy. It holds an aspect of our trauma, of lineage trauma, and this our capacity to go through our captivity. It's reliant upon like how our capacity, like how deep we can go, rather than going over it or around it or bypassing. Like how deeply can we go into the tissues,
Mm.
into the remembrance, into the energetic scar tissue that's there, the residue, the emotional residue of our own story, of our ancestors' stories, of our collective and communal stories that we're holding. We can push on a spot in our body and think like so much can be released.
Mhm.
Toxicities,
Hmm.
joy, everything is here. And that capacity to step into the liberation rather than remaining captive,
Hmm.
it is reliant on how deeply we are willing to go and how deeply we cultivate that capacity
Hmm.
to go within rather than
Yeah.
externally, to continue going within, even when it's hard, even when it's crunchy, even when it's bringing up all the identity stuff around
Hmm.
people like you don't do things like this, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, can I challenge that? Am I willing to challenge that to go deeper into my own healing and truth, to go
Hmm.
deeper into my liberation and to step into that and stand for that, for the liberation of all? Like, am I willing? And then if we're willing, then we cultivate the tools, and the tools might be our teachers. The tools might be learning, right? Like learning movements and breaths and doing it on your own, and then working with teachers. It can be so many things. It might just be sitting in silence and being with your inhale and exhale. Like it doesn't have to be fancy, right? You don't
Hmm.
have to trek to the highest mountain or the deepest jungle. You can,
Hmm.
because that's fun too. But you don't have to. You can just sit and be with yourself. But that willingness, and the cultivation of your own capacity to keep going deeper. Yeah, that's that thread that must be plucked.
How
Yeah.
deeply can I meet myself?
Yeah.
I'd like to read something that I want to bring in from Audre Lorde.
Yes, please.
This is one reason why the erotic is so feared and so often relegated to the bedroom alone, when it is recognized at all. For once we begin to feel deeply all the aspects of our lives, we begin to demand from ourselves and from our life pursuits that they feel in accordance with that joy which we know ourselves to be capable of. Our erotic knowledge empowers us, becomes a lens through which we scrutinize all aspects of our existence, forcing us to evaluate those aspects honestly in terms of their relative meaning within our lives. And this is the grave responsibility projected from within each of us, not to settle for the convenient, the shoddy, the conventional, or the expected, and not even the merely safe.
Yeah. Thank you for that reading.
Wow. Yeah, thank you, Palomi. That was amazing.
Felt appropriate to bring through that snake skin, that remembrance of an old layer, right? That we've all once carried and still are working through to shed the ways in which we dim the divinity, the light, the essence in ourselves by compromising to conventionality, by giving ourselves away in some or many ways, and that leading to our greater fragmentation, not our greater integration.
Yeah. It feels like there is, I don't know if this feels like it might be an upcoming episode, but the communal healing of old, where the integration was held in communion with others, the healing, the collective recalibration of nervous systems with one another, rather than trying to do the remembrance work on your own, of trying to, okay, I can feel this captivity, how do and feeling like you have to do it on your own and that's it. And if there's like the deep trauma healing, it was done in villages, it was done together. It was not that you alone have to go do all of this deep work. You must remember yourself by yourself. There was the remembrance of the individual in the safety and communion of the whole. And it feels like there is a space that has been denigrated and vilified as a part of colonization, and that Black and brown bodies are holding this, oh, I have to do everything on my own. Like I have to heal on my own, and it's not safe to bring this into community. I have to heal this captivity by myself. And it feels like this might be a space, just a space to continue that curiosity and continue going deeper, like in a future episode, of like bringing in the community aspect of healing from captivity and releasing those bondages.
Yes.
I love that. It feels so good to share and discourse and explore with the two of you. Thank you. Thank you. Especially those tender spaces and those threads that are uncomfortable and scary to uncover.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you both so much. It is always just the magic and the medicine of being able to journey with you into the uncomfortable, into the erotic, into the forgotten, the fragmented, into all of the places. I'm in deep gratitude and so overjoyed that we journeyed together and that we've chosen, like on a soul level, to continue journeying together.
Yes.
Thank you both for your love and safety and just being able to hold and create this container together for all of these conversations and for flowing so beautifully, both of you. Thank you.
I love you both so much. Does that feel like completion for today's episode? Paloma, does that feel maybe?
Yeah.
This is the part of the episode where everybody just gets to see us love on each other for the next 10 minutes, because this is what we do every time.
Right?
Every time.
Right. We're like, no, you're amazing. No, you're so fucking amazing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you both, and thank you everyone for journeying with us, for following whatever tendril, whatever pluck you received in the cosmic thread to come into space with us. We'll be back. Come play again. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nika. Sorry. Thanks all for joining.